Hello and welcome to another episode of International Business Talk series brought to you by Sunway International Business Society. My name is Hui Ching and I am joined with my colleague Anastasia. Joining us today is Mr. Roshan Thiran from Leaderonomics Club. From
Yep.
Leaderonomics. Yeah. So hello Roshan, how are
Yep.
you doing?
Good to be here and good to see you both.
Nice. We are so happy to have you here too. So, firstly, could you kindly introduce and tell us more a bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. So I I don't know where to start, but I got from a very young age, I was very big into sports. And initially started with wanting to play badminton, and then I realized I was not very good at it, and then got into football. Because inspired by Argentina in 1986 again. I think most of you weren't born that time, when they won the World Cup in Mexico, and Diego Maradona. And I ended up doing quite well, and get one of my first coach actually was a guy called Mokhtar Dahri, who's actually a very famous Malaysian football player. And he inspired me, and to one big profound thing that he taught me was that life is not about talent, life is about hard work. And that sort of characterized the life after that. Like, it's really pushing yourself really hard. I got a scholarship to go to the US, in a local university, in a university in the US. And then from there, I got working for a company called General Electric. I think almost 15 years, 14, 15 years with GE, in 9 different roles. Firstly in the US, and then I went to Europe for a bit, went back to the US, came back to Asia to run the aviation business. And then uh, and then I took many learning and development roles, like HR roles, and somehow got into that space. And then Johnson and Johnson, again, came in and said, "Hey, come and do the same thing you're doing for GE for us." So I went to J&J in a global role, running their talent. And that's where I decided to, because of the movement, moving, having been based in China, in Shanghai, and then also in Japan, and so many places, right? And at some point in time, you say you just want to build some roots, and so I decided I want to stay put in Malaysia, help transform Malaysia, because we were going through a lot of transformational needs, and I got involved with the Malaysian government a bit, in terms of helping. At that time, Khazanah actually was doing, together with Tun Badawi at that time, trying to transform GLCs, and so helping them on a pro bono basis, and hoping for the best for the country. And that's where I set up Leaderonomics together with Hui Meng, and the two of us said, let's figure out how to help Malaysia, right? And that's the dream, and that's how we started clubs, because we said there's no future with the politicians and all these idiots in power today, right? I mean, it's ultimately useless fighting them. So why not build a new generation of leaders, people like you guys, right? That will go out there and change the value system, that change the belief system. The beliefs. I think we are indoctrinated with beliefs about racism, about race, about religion, about all kinds of funny indoctrinations, right? So we changed the belief that we can do it. Malaysians can be world number one. And we've proved that. I mean, my entity in GE, we moved it from one of the worst operations in the world to be the best in the world, and still 20 years later, they are still number one in the world in the overhaul business, right? Aviation. So it's possible to be number one. It's possible to be big. It's possible to grow. It's possible to have a unicorn, right? Every country, Singapore is a unicorn. Indonesia is a unicorn. Malaysia is still none. Even badminton, right? We talk so big about how good we are in badminton. We still don't have a world champion, right? Always number two, right? What's happening, right? So I mean, I think these are all beliefs, right? And that's what the Leaderonomics was set up, right? Is to say, hey, let's change these beliefs. And we cannot get rid of these politicians. They will cling on to power forever, right? So bring in a new generation that think differently, and that act differently, and that behave differently, and ultimately will transform the country, right? And that was the dream, and that's Leaderonomics. So yeah, so that's a brief intro.
Thank you for that. So over the years, you have assumed a lot of leadership positions. So, in your opinion, what does it mean to have effective leadership, and how does this impact the organization and also its people?
Sure. So leadership is confusing, right? Because we blame everything for leadership, right? But at the same time, it's very simple, right? It's about taking a group of people and achieving something profound and something impactful and something, like Steve Jobs said, put a dent in the universe, right? So you look at our current leadership, right? We have a crisis, and we are more interested in their own personal agendas, and how can I make money out of the vaccine and this and that, all kinds of rubbish, right? So that's self-serving leadership. So at the heart of it, leadership is service, lah, right? It's about service to a community and saying that I want to take this community and take them to a different height, right? Whether it's moving them out of a certain place of hopelessness and bringing hope to them, whether it's about taking them from where they are today, in organizations, and moving them to a much better place, making them more sustainable. So, even parenting, right? Parenting is leadership, right? Because you're taking children and growing them into leaders, right? Growing them into effective citizens of the country, right? So when you talk about effective leadership, it's really about the output, right? Where are you taking people and enabling them to grow, enabling them to achieve things that are at least their potential, right? I mean, the best leadership is really about taking people and outperforming, right? That means, I can do A, but getting you to do B and C, right? And that's real true leadership, right? And leadership is actually so that's fundamental of leadership, right? It's about moving people, it's about taking people, it's about vision, right? So you have to have a clear vision of where you want to go. You have to have a clear sense of reality. Here am I. And then you have to take them on that journey to get there, right? And so you see great leaders, right? Like crisis leaders, like Winston Churchill, who has a crisis like World War II, right? I mean, much more scary than COVID, right? Bombs coming in, and yet having the audacity and the belief saying this is where we're going to go. Here's where we are. We need to figure out, in terms of building the right U-boats, or right, really figuring out how to get and counter the Germans at that point in time. And we've seen that, right? And we've seen even leadership where it comes to organization like Google having a clear vision. I want to organize all the world's data. But your data is so messed up. If you look at 96, 97, when the internet first came out, it was really messed up, right? So Google said, let's organize emails, let's organize search, let's organize maps, let's organize books, let's organize this. And it's very clear, right? So effective leadership is having that clarity, having of where you want to go, having the clarity of where you are, and ultimately charting that journey and executing and inspiring people to go along that journey with you, right? But the essence of leadership is not simple, right? Because many people think leadership is about traits. It is, right? But just because you can talk doesn't mean you're a good leader. You also need to listen, right? Which is the opposite of talking. Just because you have big picture doesn't mean you've got vision, right? You also need to know how to execute, get things done. Just because you fight, and never give up doesn't mean you're a good leader. You also need to know when to quit, because some things are deprioritized and quit, right? So it's opposite, right? So leadership is a contradictory of sorts. It's many opposite traits fighting for relevance, but depending on the context, So you look at our country, right? Compare Nelson Mandela, who's such a great statesman and a leader. He became president for one term in South Africa. The moment he became president, he quit, right? He knew when to quit. And so everybody said, great leader, right? Here we have some people 22 years in power, so not enough, right? I need more power, right? And so on and so forth, right? So you start to look and say, but Nelson Mandela, when he was in prison, 27 years, he never quit, right? He didn't quit and say, I forget it, I don't want to be, I don't want to do that change anymore. He quit at the right time, and he fought at the right time. But that's leadership, right? Knowing when to do something. And if you think about Winston Churchill and all these great leaders, they at the right time, they knew what to do. And that takes experience, that takes development, that takes you need to get you need to get a lot of experiences to know when to do the right thing at the right time. So leadership is two things. It's about knowing where to go, where we are. There has to be clarity of reality, where you are, clarity of vision, and clarity of how to get there. But the second part is the journey of getting there requires you to play in two extremes. I sometimes must stop, but sometimes I must shut up and listen. I sometimes must be big picture and give a vision and inspire people, but sometimes I must whack people and say, come on, let's get things done. I need to execute, right? But you need to know when to do the right thing, right? Because if you talk at the wrong time and you listen at the wrong time, you're ineffective. So when you talk about effective leadership, that's how you become effective, right? And that takes practice, that takes experience. That's why we encourage young people, right? I mean, we've got internships and other things, right? So we say, look, come in and learn leadership, because the only way you can become a great leader is by making mistakes and realizing, oh, I should have not talked that time, I should have listened. Oh, I should have quit at this project and not fought, and I should have focused more on another project, right? But sometimes we don't know. We say, oh, leaders never quit. That's not true, right? or leaders never give up, or leaders never this. I mean, there's never a never, no, right? Great leaders know how to flex between two extremes. Yep.
You're muted, Hui Ching.
Sorry. Yeah, it was super good. Like I like how you say, clarity, which I quite agree that leaders must have clarity. If a leader doesn't have clarity, doesn't know when a leader doesn't have clarity and doesn't have a direction where to go, how do you even bring your team, to one point to from maybe like B to A? Yeah, and also like what you say about the having like contrast kind of personality, which needs to apply in leadership role. Yeah, and so let's go to the second question. What okay? Were there any challenges throughout your experience working in big international companies? And what are the important lessons learned that greatly impact who you are today?
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely, there's always challenges, right? I mean, even now today, there's so many different challenges. And every one of those challenges. So, I mean, if you look at the bigger multinationals, I think many times the multinationals have problems pivoting because they're so big, right? And then you see the world change, right? And you start to see the internet. When the internet came in, then you started to see companies, the way they sell is different, right? Because there's a much more scalable way to sell, which is using e-commerce, or using in the internet, or using scalable technology. But big companies are they're so used to big sales forces going out there, knocking door to door and selling. And then some of these Amazons, and I mean, you look at what happened to Borders in traditional bookstores, and then what Amazon did to them. Then you look at what happened to retail, and now with COVID, how retail has changed, right? You don't go shopping in malls anymore. You just use your different apps, whether it's Lazada and so on and so forth, right? I mean, a lot of things have changed, right? But when big companies, the problem with pivoting is that when you look at the business, right, and it goes back to your direction. Let's say your direction changes from here. This is how you do business, right? You move to somewhere else, right? Now, when you make that pivot, right, you need to change everything, right? You need to change because for you to achieve this part versus this part, the people need to change, the behaviors need to change, the attitudes need to change, the mindsets need to change, the beliefs need to change, right? All these need to change, right? And so structurally also it might be different, because now you're saying I need to restructure my business to achieve a different goal. That means I need to compensate people differently. I need to structure people differently. Maybe the divisions become different. And so when you make these changes in a big organization, right, the problem is that the organization goes into what we call grief, right? And they go into denial. They say, oh, what, are they bargain? What for? It worked before. Let's not bother. And so, when you talk about the grief curve, right? People, when somebody, let's say you lose somebody close, initially you'll be grieving and denying and be angry and upset, with everybody, like with God, with whoever, the doctors. And then at some point in time, you accept it and you say, okay, I accept this change. I accept God has taken this person away. And then you move on and you forgive. And then you remember and you're grateful. Wow, I had such a good life with this person. Now the same thing happens in companies. Companies need to reach a point of acceptance. Okay, we're changing, no choice. The problem in big companies is that too many people are just going through this. They don't reach acceptance. They're very close to acceptance, but they bargain. And then they go back to denial. They go back to this. And over time, the change the company is trying to do gets derailed, right? So you're from Sunway, right? Classic example, right? You got, so let's change our university from the way we are today to become a more hip 21st century university. I can guarantee the professors will push back, And I know Professor Hugh is a good friend, but they'll say, oh no, that's not how academicians work. We don't know. And it's like, but you look, Coursera did it, right? It's created a university without any professors, right? And then they get all the knowledge from the universities and then they make money from it, right? Yeah. But that's pivoting, right? So big companies struggle with pivots because there's too much structures in place, and structures need to be broken and built again. So what happens is most of the time these guys just say, so suddenly say, okay lah, never mind, we just create our own the digital group, right? Under Jeff Sandu, I think now you have your own group, and I think Leaderonomics Digital is one of the, or Evox, one of our companies is part of the incubator or accelerator, I think. So we're happy, right? But you see the strategy is like, to break a structure that's already there, very hard. Look at the Star newspaper, right? oh, I'm so used to putting out newspaper, but you look, nobody builds newspapers anymore. It's just, let me create a content publishing site and then just go, right? I mean, we did the same. I mean, we were publishing a newspaper. We bought pages from the Star and we built Leaderonomics publishing arm. But at some point we realized nobody's reading newspapers. Screw it, right? So let's pivot and just go on leaderonomics.com. And today, I've got 40, 50,000 people on a daily basis reading leaderonomics.com, right? And I have no ads, I have no nothing, but we'll have to figure out at some point in time a monetization, and we pivot, right? So we bring in the right team to make that happen. So transformation is very hard for big companies. And my lesson is, I was in the Czech Republic, trying to integrate a bank that we bought many years ago, and I learned that, right? I learned that people generally are not resistant to change. They are not resistant. They are resistant to the pain of change. You see, there's a big difference, I say, Hui Cheng and Anastasia, you guys will be happy to change one, right? But when change is painful, right? So I tell you, every day you must do things differently. Last time, you just close your eyes, you drive to work, same route every day. No, now cannot. Now you must take 5 different routes to get to work. Oh, so painful. I have to remember new things. Wow, cannot, right? Now that's what you don't like. So people are resistant to the pain of change. And when you can help them to make that change less painful, which is not so easy, right? Then it happens. But people on the flip side, companies and the world will change. Now, when you change structures and you say this is the way the new structure is, people, you see, when you join a company, you will follow the company. Now you join a new company, you forget your bad habits of the old company and take the new habits, right? But why do you do it? Oh, because you're motivated, because new job, new money, new this. So you see, when you enable people to see the opportunity, oh, I get a better job, I get this, I get that, they will change, you see. So it's not that we are resistant to it. It's just that suddenly the opportunity is more exciting than the pain. Okay lah, I tahan lah, right? I mean, if you think about Olympic people who train for the Olympics, they train like crazy, and like, you mad one, you like all for the chance to win that gold medal, right? And then of course our good Olympians always never win lah. But then they train so hard to get there. But they are thinking about the gold medal. No? They're not thinking about all the pain, right? And the change is the same. You want to think about that opportunity, the benefit, and not the pain. And that's what big organizations struggle with. And to me, those were the big obstacles in my life, is where I had to move the needle. When I came back to Malaysia, I had a big organization, 400 people, 400, I think 420 people, don't want to work. I mean, don't want to move, right? Because they're so happy. Life is like that. We bought this company from Malaysian Airlines. And not that they don't want to, they just feel very pain. It's so, I'm so used to this way. Wow, you want me to do faster, And once they change, right, they realize, wow, faster is better. I do less work, right? The more efficient you are, the less work you do. And the better you become, the more efficient you become, the more productive you become, you actually have more time for yourself, right? So instead of less time, you become more time. And then they start to be joyful. And then they're all happy. Oh, suddenly we are the best in the world. The most lousy entity in the world suddenly become the best in the world. And when they see that, then they're driven to be better and better and better. And I think that's the big challenge, in many companies, is people get complacent. Yeah, so those would be a couple of key lessons, for me along that journey over the last number of years, where I, many of the big companies, and I look at it at 4 things, you got to look at alignment, So sometimes people don't move because of they are not aligned to what's happening. That means the company says this is the new change, but they're still looking at the old way, right? So there's no alignment. So you got to get it right. The other one is structure. You got to change structures for the new change. Then you got to change culture, right? And of course, at the start of it, you had to change the business model, because last time you sell this way, maybe now you sell this way. Or last time your product is like this. If you look at Leaderonomics, right, in the past, right, many people would think, oh, Leaderonomics is a training company, right? But if you look today, right, you see we are a tech company. We are the top 50 tech companies in Malaysia. We are Digital 50. We are MDEC Gain company, right? So we are super tech company. We are providing platforms. We have Nicole, right, which is which is the only LMS or LXP, right, the learning experience platform. Everybody has a learning management system, but we have an LXP, right? So I mean, not many people I don't know whether anybody else in Asia has it, right? We have an engagement platform. We have Budaya. We have Happily. We have a Mentor Cloud. It's a mentoring platform. So we're a very tech company, but that pivot was not easy, right? To move from being a traditional, okay, I go there and train, to becoming a tech provider, a platform provider. But that took 5 years, 6 years, right? A lot of money, a lot of investments, a lot of change in personnel, a lot of structural changes, and then ultimately it happens.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really like your point about how companies need to pivot, especially if they're big companies, and how people are not actually resistant to change, but more of the scared of the outcomes, like if they may fail. So, okay, moving on to the next question. As someone who has conducted many turnaround strategies for corporations and also agencies, what are the pitfalls or red flags of mismanagement based on your experience, and how can we avoid this?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's reinforcing what I said just now. I think those 4 key tenets, when you look at business model, is your business model still relevant? Is your business model still valid? So if you are Nokia 10 years ago, right, when Apple and Samsung started to change the market, or Android and iOS came in, and you still on the old tech, the old flip phones or whatever you call that. I don't know what's opposite of smartphones, not stupid phones, right? Old phones, right? But you saw the market changing, but you couldn't change. And so your business model is flawed. So number 1 is business model. Number 2 is alignment. Is everybody in your company clear about where you're going? Right. So therefore, you must be clear about where you're going. You must be clear about where you are, and you must be clear about what milestones you must hit. Right. Which you call mission, right? So you're clear about your vision, it's clear about your reality, and clear about your mission, right? So when you can have that clarity, then people will be moving in one direction. If not, you're like a person all sitting in a boat. One fella is not rowing, one fella is rowing backwards, one fella is rowing forward, one fella is rowing, but the timing is okay, 1, 2, 3, row. The guy is 1 row, 2, 3, don't row, and 3. So then it's like, wow, why is this? This boat won't move very, very much, right? Or they'll move all over, right? And so that's the second piece. The third piece is structure. You need to look at your structure. Once you build your new business model, you need to structure your company according to this new business model. And the final part is what I call culture. So culture is about behaviors. What kind of behaviors are needed so that you can succeed? What kind of beliefs do you have, right? And culture is a lot about chemicals, right? I want to create, because people react to chemicals. If you got a lot of oxytocin, wow, you feel good. I feel kumbaya, right? If you got serotonin, you're motivated. If you got dopamine, you're very goal oriented, right? Every time I give you dopamine, that's why gamers love dopamine. Every time you go, okay, level 1, level 2, wow, more dopamine. Level 3, wow. You keep getting dopamine, right? So companies will realize that, okay, I need achievement, so I definitely need dopamine. But I also need collaboration, because people cannot do things alone anymore. But I need oxytocin. I need serotonin. It's leadership, right? You need clarity in leadership, but you also, but you need endorphin. It's people must tahan, right? So when you start saying, okay, how do I create a culture that can produce chemicals like this, so that my team can work in a very engaged, collaborative, achievement-oriented, goal-oriented, and also be able to have the stamina, right, to sort of persevere and achieve, right? So then you start to say, okay, how do I build rituals? How do I build the right, again, the structure first, and then the culture, and then how do I hold people accountable to this culture? So I think those 4 things, right? Business model, alignment, culture, and structure. And I look at it, and I call this the science of transforming organizations. And you can read about it. I mean, I think if you go to leaderonomics.com, you can see many articles about the science of transforming culture.
I see. Actually, culture, this, as I haven't worked yet, so sometimes like culture, I actually at first I didn't really understand about it, but actually I do heard like some entrepreneurship say about like culture is important, and culture is like a team in the same boat working together to go from one place to another place. And if everyone is not cooperative and everyone is not being in the like same alignment, how do you get to where you want to go? Yeah, so culture is like what's built a business lah. So to the next question, what was the motivation behind your social enterprise Leaderonomics, and what is the importance of a social impact from a business and individual standpoint?
Yeah. So when we first started Leaderonomics, I told you the essence of it at the start I mentioned was to see if we can transform Malaysia, right? And Obviously, we've gone to India and Thailand and Indonesia and other countries, with the same sort of vision. But the reality is that when we first started, it was like Malaysia is in a mess, still is lah, right? I mean, we thought in 2018 there was a bit of a change. Unfortunately, you got the wrong leadership again. Right at the top, who probably should have been retired many years earlier. But unfortunately, that happened. But when the idea essentially was maybe that won't work. And we've realized that politically it won't work. But if we can get a group of young people that are capable of inspiring change, no need to be change at a national level, but at change at their company level, at the change at their society level, at the community level. If we can do that right, maybe at some point in time you will start to see success in the nation, all right? And so that was really the motivation. And so when we opened it up, we essentially set up Leaderonomics as an NGO, right? We fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, we got some funding, and the funding enabled us to kickstart it as a company. But the problem with that was that the funding was very short term. So within 6 months to a year, in 2008, that funding, again, was from a company that had acquired parts of our shares. They decided to stop the funding because the leadership changed. There was a leadership change again. There was a political turmoil that happened in the country at that point in time, and then there was a change. And so we suddenly realized we didn't have funding to continue our mission. And that's where I had come in full time with Hui Meng, and both of us said, look, let's create a sustainable organization. And so we started saying, let's do training, let's do development, let's do things that we are comfortable with, which I've been doing for many years in GE and J&J. Building talent programs for companies. And as we did that, more and more companies started to engage us, and we started to grow, and we started to get more money to do the stuff. And I think Hui Cheng, you were part of the Leaderonomics Club in Taman C, right? So in 2010, 11, we started with the MBS, the Methodist Boys Leaderonomics Club, right? And then by 2012, I think when I met the minister at that time, the Deputy Minister of Education, Kamalanathan, and he was very impressed by what we're doing in the clubs. In that time, we had 3 or 4 clubs, maybe St. Mary's, most of the mission schools, because they realized the importance, and it's free, right? I mean, we were giving out clubs for free. There was no charge to it. He said, look, these clubs need to be done across the whole Malaysia, right? And that's where we started to really, open it up to any school, right? And that's where, schools in PJ and then later today we're in every state in Malaysia. Our clubs are in Cambodia, our clubs are in Brunei, we're launching, if not for COVID, we probably would have launched in 2 or 3 other countries, right? And these are free clubs, right? And starting, I think in August or September, we're starting a global club, meaning kids from anywhere in the world through Nicole can have access to a global club, right? So the idea is transformation, but it's individual transformation first. So if you look at our vision, it's about growing one person into a leader. So it's growing people into leaders, building communities of love, not of hate, not of fear, not of all these things, and ultimately it's transforming the nation, right? So it's a 3-pronged approach, which is still our mission today and our vision. So when we say, look, let's go digital, it's about how to help a person digitally grow as a leader, right? And hopefully they will transform or build their community, right? Not to be a fear-based community, not to be a racist-based community, not to be all the things that we see today, right? It's happening in leadership, tyrannical leadership around the world, right? And ultimately to get to a point where we start to see change that happens. And it's not change that we run. We are like a spark, right? We instigate a spark and we say, you grow into a leader, right? So we think you grow into a leader, and that Tisha, you grow into a leader. And we say, look, go make that change. And we are not controlling that change. But what happens is, if your value system is right, if your belief system is right, you potentially will drive positive change in the country. And that's really the goal, right? And so it's not so much to dictate the change. I think many companies or leaders, when they start saying I want to drive change, it's about dictating the change. Ours is about inspiring and instigating it, and then letting it be, right? Because we have no right to control the what is right or wrong. And remember, the world changes, right? It's a very different world today, right? Than it was 10, 15 years ago when we started, right? Yeah, so that's a bit about Leaderonomics.
Yeah, I love Leaderonomics Club a lot. Like whoever who, especially in like high school or what, I think Leaderonomics is really one of the best club that I ever joined. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So we'll move on to the next question. So this is with regards to in what way did your business had to change when the pandemic hit?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways. I mean, in March when we first got a lockdown. I mean, our Malaysia business especially, and then later the other countries. Most of our business, right, was training classroom based, right, going to classroom or doing consulting projects. So suddenly a zero revenue, right, because all of it just shut down. You can't have classrooms, and most companies were reluctant to go digital at that point in time, right? So suddenly you have 100 employees, and you got zero revenue. How are you going to pay them, right? So obviously we took a lot of loans to keep the employees as best as we can, and today we are saddled with huge amount of loans. I mean, we've got millions, $8-9 million in loan that I still have to pay off, right? Which we still have to figure out, right? But was the idea was to salvage the organization for the short term, and then on the long term we had to pivot now. So the good news is that we had already been working on digital for a long time. It's just that it was a side project. And so again, that same thing I told you, right? Is even though we were a company that was teaching people how to pivot, it's not easy internally because majority of our employees are doing training and development, right? And suddenly you say no, 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 we have to do it in a different way. We have to do virtually, so it causes friction. Right? So we have to change structure, we have to realign, we have to look at we had a business model, right? We had Nicole, it was already out. We had Happily, we had Budaya, we had all these products, right? But now it's like, we had Nicole, but we didn't have a website. So we say, okay, build Nicole.app or build Nicole.tech, build Budaya.app, and so on and so forth. So start to say, how do we go to market? Do you go, how do you go B2B? How do you sell in a pandemic? Because, usually it's you knock on the door, you go visit, and, you meet a bunch of people. Today, you got to set up, maybe it's Teams, maybe it's Zoom, maybe it's every company will be different, right? So you have to get the full cadre of everything. Like I got to get Zoom, I got to get Teams, I got to get Big Market, I got to get every done tech available platform and pay for it, and ultimately be able to service them. But we did, So by this year in June, when they announced another lockdown in June, we are like, okay, whatever, we just continue, right? So we had now moved our organization. So people who were not so willing to change, they said, let me join other training companies that were not going to change. And so they have, or they've moved to different roles, or they move into our corporations. And then the guys who's left behind said, look, I want to change, I want to pivot, and they have. And so the organization has pivoted. We put platforms, now we provide platforms. We're also learning how to sell online, right? Because how do you set up meetings and how do you push products? Not so easy, right? How do you virtually, I mean, I think, if you look at it, we have I think some of the best team buildings are online team buildings now. We were doing it for big companies all over the world. And they all come to us and say, look, your team buildings are amazing. And this is done virtually, right? And so we figured out how to crack the code. We have built simulations. So while we give you this, you take a code, you do a sim. We've set up a new organization called Evox that just focuses on digital sims. They're building simulations. So a lot of changes have happened, but you still don't know, right? Because it's still a long way away, right? A lot of times when the pandemic goes, people will revert back to the old, right? And then the stuff that you need to semi-revert back potentially. But at the same time, the future, you've already built the future. So the idea is maybe it's not about reverting, maybe it's about pushing the future even more aggressively. But that means educating a lot of people that it's okay to continue like we were, even post-pandemic. Maybe work from home is norm, maybe this is the future, maybe not having an office is all right, and so on. So we're still learning, but essentially we've made that pivot. I wouldn't even say pivot, we already had it. For us, it's not a complex thing. We've already had all the tech, right? For us, it's a pivot of lifestyle, working style, and structure, right? Because it's not so much a product pivot. So it's not a business model pivot because we had it, we've developed it, we spent millions on it in 2017, 18, 19 on all this development of all these products, right? 2020 is suddenly like, oh, that's 5% of my business. Okay, now let's move it to 50% of your business. But it's going to take some time, right? Because the business doesn't know how to sell digital. The business doesn't sell infrastructure, right? The business is good at selling transactions, right? Oh, let me do training. So we have to pivot that, right? So it's a capability pivot, not so much a business model pivot, so that was, in one sense, I think we're lucky. I wouldn't say lucky, but something that we knew this was going to happen, but we didn't know it's going to happen so fast, right? We thought we had 3, 4, 5 years. So okay, we slowly get into it, and we had a good model. Now the flip side was bad for us because we lost our business model, right? We lost our revenue source. And we had to be funded through loans, and we still have to figure out how do we pay this off, because these were not these were not investments loans, right? These were survival loans, right? To pay your workforce, right? So we'll have to figure it out, but I'm confident the team will figure it out, and we'll get there. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. I really like how you say that like business have to like pivot, especially in like those like these kind of times, like some businesses aren't still like willing to pivot, and they need to know how to sell online. Yeah, which I feel like it's very common for now. Everyone like just go Shopee or Lazada or even like any online website to like just purchase stuff. So businesses need to know how to pivot. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so for the next question, you have started Leaderonomics as a social enterprise. Now it has grown into an award-winning L&D training provider. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, we can hear you. Go
Right.
ahead. Yeah.
Training provider. Yes. With presence in several countries worldwide, how did you steer your company to achieving this?
Yeah. So I mean, to me, I think this starts with when we started Malaysia and we started to grow, and then we realized that, we've built a nice infrastructure, right? We've got a community infrastructure with clubs. We were in 100 plus schools in Malaysia. We were working with the Ministry of Education very closely. Then the natural thing is when the Cambodians heard about it, the Ministry of Education in Cambodia came to us and said, hey, you're doing this in Malaysia. Can you help us in Cambodia? And then when they said, how much are you going to charge? We said, nothing, you can have it. They're like, oh, okay. So then we started clubs in Cambodia, right? One of our first ventures was really the Cambodian operations, right? But, Cambodia is not so sustainable, because for us, you need a sustainable business for us to give free. Right? So obviously then we said, look, you just take it and do it, right? But then we said, let's try Thailand, right? And Thailand was we had a joint venture in Thailand with a group there, and they were very successful, and they said, look, we want to build the business and also the community work. Okay, that's fantastic. Then India, a couple of guys from Malaysia, Indian guys from India who were working here. One guy particularly, Pati, he was heading up Intel here, and he said, I want to go back to India and I want to take Leaderonomics there. So we worked out a joint venture where he and his partner really, ran the business, and had some equity in it also. And then we had a very strong Indonesian team. A couple of Indonesians graduated from universities like HELP and so on. They came and worked for us and say, hey, because of the part of the pandemic, their work permits they were not given work permits and stuff, so we had to send them back to Indonesia. But they were good employees. I'm like, okay, let's open up Indonesia, right? So now with Nadira there, and so each country is slightly different. And today with Nicole, right, because many countries, like if you look, we have a partnership in the UK now with the London School of Sales, right? It's a huge prestigious organization, and they said, look, Nicole is the most amazing thing, right? And we want to partner with you guys and build Nicole for the UK market and others, right? And London School of Sales is a fantastic sales organization to have, and one by one, different conversations led to expansion, right? And I think that's the thing is like this, right? You build something, and if it's of value, right, the world will come and say, I want it too, right? Then you figure out how to enable the rest of the world to have access to it, right? I think the problem sometimes is we try to expand too fast outside without really building value. Then you won't see an expansion, right? But when you build something of value, right, and we realize that, as we build Nicole, as we build now Budaya, it's incredible, right? I mean, we have a gamify. I mean, imagine every day in the work, especially young folks like you, every day you get a chance to win points, to get free Starbucks vouchers, to get a whole bunch of things, right? Make your boss dance maybe, or make your boss sing a song to you, or stuff like that, right? It's cool. You enjoy it, but because of the because of the app, the HR community or the CEO gets a lot of data about employees. And that helps, right? Because we know how to take care of you. We know how when you're not feeling well or not feeling up to it, we know how to motivate you. And it becomes a great engagement too, right? And you can also have a say. You can have town hall. You can ask questions. You can do a lot of things, right? So it's a very simple app, but it's still very powerful, right? So I mean, as we started more and more getting into this space, we realized that there are lots of new things that traditional companies take for granted and say this is the way things are. But the younger folks, and so we are unique, right? Because we are a traditional company in a sense, right? Not so traditional because we've got youth work and so on, but traditional in the sense that this is how learning works. We teach like this. We must sit down and listen to the teacher. Da, da, da. So now we're saying, okay, we change the way we teach, right? It's not about sitting down. It's about engaging. So you play some games, and then while you're playing games, insight comes in, right? While you're answering, your boss gives you feedback. You have mentoring once a week, once a month, and so we've restructured the way employees learn. We've restructured the way we learn. We restructure the way we get bite-sized. Nicole is like powerful, right? It's customized, right? You have, both of you may have Nicole, but both of you have very different insights, right? That means your feeds are very different, right? And this is what happens with Facebook and LinkedIn. So say if Facebook and LinkedIn can do it, you have customized feeds. Why can't we do it? Right? And that's what we did, right? So, I mean, Nicole has customized feeds. Right? If you're interested in learning tech and you're interested in learning, I don't know, sewing or whatever, right? You get whatever you want, right? And the feeds come to you specific to you, right? But then the company says, both of you must learn this. Okay, lah. Both of you get the same marketing feed. But ultimately, the personalized feed is very personalized to you. Right? And tech allows you to do that, right? Yeah, so in that sense, as we scaled around the world, our scaling was not intentional, meaning like, oh, I had a game plan in 10 years time I'll be in like 10 different countries. I think it was like, our only goal was to transform Malaysia. But then the Thais came in, hey, not fair lah. You transform Malaysia, transform Thailand, so lah. Okay lah, take lah, right? I'm not doing it, you guys do it, right? And okay, and when we help them out, right? So I used to go to Thailand at least 3-4 times a year to teach at companies there. Same in India, right? Prior to the pandemic, I was in India a lot because our India team was like, come. Okay, fine, right? And potentially, we have a partner now in Cyprus. Of course, we've got London School of Sales in the UK, and now we've got employees. I mean, I've got an employee, in the US, Dylan, right? I've got a person, Regina, in Mexico, right? So Leaderonomics, we have someone in Mexico. We have someone in my board, comprised Paul Marca. Paul Marca is the dean, not the dean. He's the provost of Stanford University, right? So Paul's sitting in California. He's our board. He's part of our board, the Leaderonomics board, right? So when I look at my board, so I mean, I was talking to Paul yesterday. I'm like, okay, I'm talking to the Stanford guy here. And then in the evening, I'm talking to Regina, who's in Mexico, in Mexico City, and I have to figure out the timing because like, Regina, I can't do afternoon calls because for her that'll be like middle of the night, right? I have to figure out how to do early morning calls with her. And then with my Indonesian team, with Nadira and Pancha and all these, I think we probably have about 15-20 people in Indonesia at this point in time, and then we've got Rabia, who's my editor. She's from Brunei. So you start looking at it, and it's exciting, right? Because all of them are part of one big family. And for my team, it's exciting because we get to meet people all over the world, even though we are virtual, right? And we get to work, right? So my monetization guy, Jonathan, sits in Indonesia, who works with Kiran, who sits in KL, and they're talking to Regina on traction in Mexico, and so they are like, okay, so it's really a global team, right? And to me, that's what we want to build up. We want to say maybe it's bigger, maybe the vision is bigger than transforming Malaysia. Maybe it's looking at the world and saying the world is a beautiful place. Let's connect people and let's enable this connection to produce something that is positive, that can be game changing, right? We have a product called MAT, making a difference, where people all over the world do MAT things, and and if you go to the website mat.leaderonomics.org, I think you'll be able to see like there's 21 MAT days. So we encourage people to take up the 21 MAT days challenge. Anybody at any time can say for 21 days I want to go MAT. MAT is making a difference, right? And we see companies, right? I mean, I saw Maybank. We saw different companies say, okay, I want to take on the Maybank. The Maybank takes on the 21 MAT days challenge, and it's very simple. In fact, my daughter, right, is in one of the videos, right, and she's like, it's little at that time, right, when we set this up. She was this little girl who's like, let's take on a math challenge, and so on and so forth. And to me, and then I've got people from the UK, from the US. We had Juliet Fund, who's a famous speaker, who came and said, "Hey, I want to be part of the Met Challenge. I want to get my whole family on the Met Challenge." So for me, it's about doing these initiatives, right? And being able to inspire people to do stuff. And again, I am not, if you look at it, I'm not like forcing people to go on the Met Challenge and so on. I'm enabling. I'm creating a tool, right? So if you go to mat.leaderonomics.org, it's very simple. You go there, you see that, okay, sign up for the challenge, and when you finish the challenge, you put in your things, you get a cert, right? To say I've completed, and then you go on social media, and more people get excited about the challenge, right? So we got schools, right? Like we had Help International took on that. So that's a school. Let's take on the 21 manage. Anyone in the world, right? And I've seen schools in the US, in UK, all say I'm taking part in and this is a company in Malaysia, right? So I mean, many people say, you're Malaysian fellas, cannot do anything, right? But I'm saying, hey, we are not a big company, we're a small company in Malaysia. I'm just, we've created something that is huge, and something very simple, right? I mean, and we did this, just prior to the pandemic, right? We got people come in and say, okay, quickly take videos, one day before, I think next day is lockdown. We just made these videos, right? 21 videos. And I said, Jenna, come here, bring your guitar, and whoever I could get my hands on, I was like, come into our office now, let's make videos, right? But it's an idea, right? But ideas need to be incubated and executed, right? And I think a lot of people have ideas, but they don't incubate and execute, right? And to me, it's like, we had a Paul Maka, our board member, right? He told me, there's a lot of students in Stanford doing nothing. They're taking gap years. They don't want to study because it's online. Da, da, da. You go and use them. So I'm like, okay. So 2 weeks later, we came up with a global internship program. So I'm gonna get interns from all over the world, not just Malaysia, right? Suddenly I've got 30 interns from all over the world. I'm like, oh, cool, right? And to me, it's about getting the final step. You can have the idea, but execution is key, right? Yep.
Yes, I really liked the interesting point you mentioned about how Leaderonomics progress through gradual expansion and the importance of also building the value of your product and service. So moving on to the next question. As a founder, CEO, and also a seasoned director for multiple MNCs, what qualities do you look for when candidates are applying for work or internship?
Yeah, so I think each company will be different, right? But one of the things I think at Leaderonomics at least, we want change makers, right? We want people that are wanting to make a difference. We want people to be proactive. We want people to see. You may not know everything, and nobody believes you know everything. Even I am learning, right? But I think where the difference is that, yeah, you may be learning, but the good news is that there is an opportunity for you to want to develop yourself, want to grow, and you want to proactively be better. And I think that's the one fundamental thing. Anybody that wants to be better will be good, right? So I mean, yes, there is little technical pieces. Depending on the job you're applying for, right? You might, if you're going to be a writer for Leaderonomics.com, obviously you must have good English skills, or at least some English skills, right? Obviously, that's important, so it's if you take away the functional piece, I think ultimately comes down to leadership, right? Are you proactively wanting to improve yourself, So to me, that's the one big trait, The rest of it, you can learn. I mean, you want to be innovative, you want to learn how to edit. I've hired I hired a video editor that had no video editing skills, right? But he's so proactive. He's like, I can learn, and like no podcast skills, right? And then he just built our podcast studio in 2 weeks, and then he's starting to edit videos, and he's becoming the best editor among all the editors, right? And to me, I'm like, great job, And this is a guy called Sashi. I mean, he's a young grad, just graduated, right? So to me, I've got people, in GE before. I've hired an English major to become a CFO. Today, she's like a big CFO in the GE family. That's an English major, got maths major. I got all kinds of crazy stuff, right? And they become great CFOs. So to me, I don't think it's about what you learn, It's about more of what you want to be, And how, not so much that, you can be ambitious, but are you willing to put in the effort to learn and grow to achieve that, Yeah. So to me, that's it, That's it.
Yeah, I think it's really important in our life now to constantly learning and growing. If we don't learn, then how do we improve to become better, right? So as
Yep.
someone who has lead teams like you, how do you empower people to become better leaders? Since just now, like you said that, like we all need to constantly become better. How do you guide them, or how do you empower them to become a better leader?
Yeah. So, I think the early days, right? You have to handhold people a lot, lah, right? And to me, one of the things that we do, like our internship program, it's changed significantly now. Is that you you start to say, okay, one thing I can give you instruction and I can give you a manager, but I also need to give you a mentor. I need to give you a coach. I need to give you instructions on a daily, weekly basis. You know, I need to be connected with you. And I think if you put them on a part and then you say, okay, I empower you, you know, I tell you the why we're doing this, but how you need to figure out and tell me. And if you're wrong, then I instruct you. But if you're right, go ahead, right? I think if you can build an infrastructure like that, things will be fine, right? So I think empowerment becomes a lot of it is structural, right? If you can structurally build the platform, right? Um, it will make sense, lah. You know, ultimately, that things will go in the right manner, lah. So it's about building the right structure, right? Once you build the right structure, the infrastructure, after that, people processes, right, should be part of the structure. After that, things will just happen, lah.
All right, so I'll move on to the next question. This is actually the last question. So as an international business graduate yourself, what career advice would you give to our graduating and our future IB graduates who feels lost and maybe not knowing what to do, especially during this time of uncertainty?
Yeah, so I think it takes time for us to figure out our purpose, lah, right? Um, so I think at the heart of it, right? I think you have to figure out what your destiny is, lah. Why are you on this earth for, lah? And this one for me took a long time. I only figured out in my late 30s, right? Then when I started Leaderonomics and so on. But it was a journey, right? So I started and I said I want to be the CEO of GE. I work like a dog. Suddenly I got all these big roles, and then suddenly I realized I don't want. I want to go help people. Suddenly I go to HR. I realized, okay, HR is not really that. I need to fix HR. And then I started going to fixing. And then I got into L&D and this. So, but as you journey, you start to figure, okay, I figured it out. This is what I want to do, right? And all of us need to go through this journey. And Steve Jobs also, if you look at him, he went to India, he went here, trying to figure out what to do in his life. You look at all great leaders, they take time to experiment. So, for me, it's like, you go to a job and if you like it, great, stay on. If you don't like it, then, figure out a way to transition and try something different, right? And the problem is we get bogged down to saying, oh, I suddenly am good at it, but you may not necessarily like it. So I was really good as a finance person, become a CFO and so on, but not necessarily I like it. Right? So then you and it's very hard because you get promoted up in the same level, right? And then you're like, oh, I'm stuck here. I'm like big global CFO, and I'm like, what the hell am I stuck here? Or then I become GM and run a business, and I'm like, but I don't quite truly, I like elements of it and I'm good at it, but maybe I want something more, right? So I'd say go and look out, lah, right? I mean, volunteer, lah, right? I mean, if you've got nothing, come and join us, lah. We've always got tons of volunteer work to do, right? And you do one kind of volunteer work, you do another one, you figure it out. I've got a bunch of 30 folks all over the world. They're volunteering for us, as interns, right? And one person's running this, one person's figuring out, okay, how can I build Nicole into US, right? And I like business. I think I like it, but I try it, lah. And we have a successful. Oh, I think, oh, that's great. Okay, maybe then I get jobs that are related, or I tell come and talk to me and say, let me take over Leaderonomics USA and run and or be head of Nicole for USA. I'm like, fine, but you don't know, right, until you try, right? And the same on our side, right? We say, you try lah. If you're successful, great. Then you decide lah, right? If you're not successful, move on lah. Right? We also don't want you also don't want to do it, right? Go lah, right? And do something else, or you can try something else with us lah. Assuming you got all the right characteristics of, like I said lah, you want to learn, you want to keep growing, you want to change. Then you continue lah, right? But I think that's the one advice is keep trying lah. You never know. And then when you find your sweet spot, okay lah, invest time in that lah. Grow in that and put pain. It's painful, even if you find a sweet spot. You see, every job, even you love the job so much, got bad things one, right? Got administrative things. I mean, there's no job that's perfect one. But you are willing to do that because you love the job, right? And you love, right, what you do, right? So then all the painful stuff can throw away. But you see, when you don't love the job and you have painful stuff, right? What happens is the job becomes unbearable, but you're good at it, right? Your heart is not right, lah, right? So then you say, okay lah, you have one life, right? Enjoy it lah, live it lah. I mean, if you can, I mean, we are not in a time where in the olden days, right? You worked to live, right? Right? Essentially, you had to work. Today, when work becomes meaningful, work has purpose, and you have opportunity. You say, okay, there's no work that you like. In my case, I realize don't have lah. Okay lah, I build my own lah. I build Leaderonomics lah. You also can, right? I mean, you have opportunity to build businesses. I mean, it's so easy to set up businesses today, right? But you don't know what you want to set up until you figured it out, right? So to me, figure it out first, then go ahead lah. So take the time lah, experience you can. I hit my 30s, so suddenly I look at myself, I'm almost going to be 50 already, but I should have done this earlier. But it's okay lah. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? People can live longer, right? 90s, so now you're still working, right? So you got a lot of time to figure it out, so you don't have to rush things lah. When I realized that lah, so I'll leave you with that piece of advice lah.
Okay, there's some really meaningful advice, especially for future graduates who are graduating soon. And that is all the questions we have for you today. Thank you so much,
No
Roshan.
problem.
It's
Happy to be here.
such a pleasure to have
Absolutely.
you here with us and to reconnect again, and for sharing these wonderful insights into today's discussion.
Sure. So all the best. I'm sure you guys will do great in your life.
Thank you so much. So with that, we'll end the interview. Catch us on another episode of International Business Talks. Until then, thank you and bye-bye.